Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn the notifications on. Also, make sure to check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. We tell you all the time, trying to get to 1,000 members on there. We got to catch our football folks over at OnlyFins. You check that one out as well. That's on the Dolphins. This is Heat, NBA, 10 different channels plus stage shows. It's pretty damn cool, and it's the best place to talk Heat these days. Just make sure you click on the link that's in the description, bypass the $1 Apple upcharge, and get started right away. You can cancel at any time. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. Includes Underdog Fantasy. It's underdogfantasy.com, underdogfantasy.com, or download the Underdog app. Underdog, the place to cash in on all your takes during the wild card playoffs, which haven't been great. So you may want to find a different way to play them. Which players are going off? Which ones are ice cold? Should have played Derrick Henry over for sure. With over 5 million happy players and 2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. So check it out. The place to play Pick'em. Download the app. Sign up with the code 5. That's promo code 5, FIVE, and deposit now to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's the promo code 5. You must be 18 or older, 19 or older in Alabama or Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, 21 or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado for some games. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncbgambling.org. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne.
Yikes. Five on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing rubber frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts, we're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
Welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at Five Reasons Sports. Greg Sylvander. You can follow me at Greg Sylvander. We are still following the Jimmy Butler saga. The Miami Heat have had a very successful road trip. I don't think there's any other way to look at it, and that includes a double overtime loss in Sacramento that should have been a win. They were up 17, but they had a blowout win in Utah. Well, a solid win in Utah. A blowout win in Portland, which is what they should do to them, and now they're close to closing up this thing in LA, and we are expecting the games to be played. Ira has reported that. We wish the best to the people who are dealing with that tragedy in the Los Angeles area. The Heat have 2 games coming up against the Clippers and the Lakers. The Clippers on Monday. Technically, if that had to get moved or pushed back a day, it could be, I think, because the Clippers are home again on Wednesday. So the Heat would be in town. So if it needed to be, it could be pushed back a day, but it doesn't seem like that's the inclination. And then the Lakers on Wednesday. And of course, that would be, if those 2 games are played, the last 2 games of the 7-game suspension. Of course, the Heat also beat Golden State on this trip. So now 3-1 on the trip, 3-2 without Jimmy Butler during this suspension. I have noticed that a lot of folks who were celebrating, Heat fans supposedly, who were celebrating the Heat getting blown out at home by Utah, not celebrating as much anymore. They've gone a little bit quiet as the Heat start to play better. And the players who are playing better right now are their young guys. Basically, their 5 most recent first-round picks, with the exception of Precious, who is no longer with them, of course, have combined for 77 points in the win in Utah. And then I believe is 84 points in the win in Portland. So I'm talking about Bam, Tyler, Jaquez, Jovic, Ware. From 5 of their own first-round picks are doing the bulk of the lifting right now, and that's overcoming the struggles of Terry Rozier, which continue, and obviously the absence of Jimmy Butler. But what we want to get into today is leverage, because all of this is a leverage game. It has been since the beginning. I've talked about the leverage lobbing going back and forth between Butler's camp and the Heat, and day to day, it's on one side, something gets out through someone, on the other side, something gets out through someone. I want to assess where this is right now, and also I'm gonna do like the discomfort meter with you. Okay.
Okay.
Like how much, what is your level of discomfort with these things happening? Because really at this stage, it seems to be, and tell me if you think I'm wrong. I think the Heat have seized back all the leverage here. And the reason I think they've seized back all the leverage is team's playing well. Okay, that it starts there. If this was a disastrous road trip, there would be a lot more pressure from the fans and others for them to just do something. Just do something. Okay, just make a trade, even if it's a bad trade, but just end this particular. Just get some help instead of for Jimmy. Literally for Jimmy in exchange for Jimmy, right? Like that's what I think people will be pushing for. But the Heat are playing well, and it's their young players, their young core that is playing well, and I think that helps them. Additionally, they filed. They suspended Jimmy Butler for 7 games, and to this point, the Players Association has not filed the grievance that reportedly they were supposed to file. And these things take time as it is. Of course, Jimmy basically losing about $3.6 million in this bargain based on the 7 games that he's missing. And so far, the Players Association has not yet filed it. And when they file it, the Heat have shown that they're willing to air some dirty laundry on the other side, because as even Tim Hardaway said, and I don't know this to be true, but based on my reporting, I suspect it is true. The Heat filed a pretty lengthy report with various examples of misbehavior leading up to this. Not just one incident, but a series of incidents.
Isn't it weird that the grievance hasn't been filed? I mean, it's a little weird.
I think it's odd. I do. I've been told sometimes that happens. Maybe, again, they're just trying to get their ducks in a row with their own attorneys and everything else, which is very possible. I'm not saying it's not going to be filed, but it does take some time. And of course, one of the things that I thought would hurt the Heat from a leverage perspective would be the dirty laundry being aired now. It helps them in the leverage with Jimmy at the moment, but not in trying to trade Jimmy to another team, right? Because if you're talking about how difficult the player is to deal with, you would assume all except desperate Phoenix would be scared off by that, right? Okay. The other part of this leverage that I think has gone against Jimmy and in the Heat's favor is the Bradley Beal part of this, which is that it seems that Jimmy and his camp tried to establish some kind of leverage by essentially saying making it known through various reporters that Memphis and Milwaukee were not options. And so it became pretty clear that Phoenix has been and is the only option for him all along. And perhaps that maybe promises were made on that side that he would get the extension that he seeks. And like I can tell you, none of that has quieted. That it is Phoenix. The Heat believe it has been Phoenix all along. But yet Phoenix has a problem, which is that they have a player making a lot of money who's not really worth that money at this point in Bradley Beal. And not only that, but has control over where he goes because he has a no trade clause that he's not going to waive for just anyone. And then we thought, okay, well, maybe there might be some leverage established back on the Butler camp because Mark Bartelstein is his agent, and his son works for the Suns in the front office. And so maybe like some favors would be done here. Maybe perhaps the agent wouldn't fulfill his fiduciary responsibility, which first is to his client, Bradley Beal. But then the reports came out that Mark Bartelstein is going to fulfill his fiduciary responsibility. He's not going to, and that Beal essentially is not ready to just waive his no trade clause for anybody. So I don't think that went particularly well for Jimmy's camp. And so I kind of feel like we're at a stage where the Heat are where they've been all along, which is that they're in control of this situation, which is, again, this is not me carrying water. I'm just trying to evaluate it as it is. And Jimmy wanted his money and wanted to get traded, and neither of those two things has happened yet. The Heat don't seem like they're uncomfortable being uncomfortable. They didn't want this to seep in with the rest of the players. And here's the other part that I think has made things harder on Jimmy's side, is that the players are starting to make it clear that they're okay as they are. And I read these comments last night, and I'll read them again, but I just posted them. I didn't comment on it. I didn't make an editorial judgment on it. I just posted them. I let the fans do that, okay? So here we go with this, all right? Haywood Highsmith last night after the game. Haywood had a terrific game last night, okay? Haywood is not outspoken. I can just tell you. Haywood is – if I was to say – a normal person who is a basketball player, like H is that, okay? He's just calm. He's cool. He doesn't get involved in any of this stuff, okay? I mean, he literally told me that when Drew said that Haywood was trying to give him his nickname because he didn't think he deserved it anymore. This is not a cocky individual, okay? And when I went up to Haywood, he said the same thing. He says, well, we can share the nickname. This is not an immodest person. This is not a person trying to make waves. His comment last night, Haywood Highsmith, we are buying in The vibes are great. Everybody is locked in. We are communicating to each other on the court. We are connected. The team chemistry off the court is amazing as well. We're all doing it together, holding one another. This is a big word here. Accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we didn't need to say all that. Just that we're playing well, we're enjoying our time, right, Greg?
There were other comments too where there was talk about, making the most of the people that they have enough with who's there. And I think it may have been Tyler who said that.
I'll read that one too. And again, this has even more cachet coming from the player who's been the best player on the team this year. This is what we wanted, just to get back on the road, get away from all the chaos, just come out here and compete, get back to who we are. I mean, the last 5 years, they've been Jimmy Butler's team. To get back to who we are, rallying around each other. None of the players out there quit in the middle of a game. Making it about the guys that are here now. We got enough. Am I water carrying, or am I just reading what the players are saying? Now, I think, and I'll get to you on this, is going to play our game. I think that I think that's another way the leverage has shifted to the Heat. Honestly, and I know some fans are saying, well, you got to get rid of him now. The players don't want to. No, the players will accept whatever it is the organization does. Okay. Jimmy Butler can help them win. No matter what grievances they may have. And I don't know what they are or aren't. Or they just want to go for the noise. If he comes back and he plays well, he will be accepted again by those who accepted him before, and those who maybe, kind of didn't love that he sort of filled up the whole room before and that they were always on edge. They'll still feel that way. Like, that's not going to change any of that. So I'm not saying, but Heat fans think that it has to be done. I don't think that's the case. I think this basically shows, well, the organization is proving to be stronger than people thought. Like Jimmy going like half Minnesota Jimmy, this ain't Minnesota. The players are different. The organization is different. They've stood their ground on this. They've come out and established some leverage by saying, we're going to bring him back on the 17th. He can decide not to play. We can suspend him again without pay, and then let the Players Association fight that. They wanted him to be in the facility working out. He went. Okay. So again, I'm going to, on the other side, I'm just going to line it up for you, but I'm just saying, can you make a case before we do that Jimmy has created leverage with this decision? Because even though I agreed with some of what he felt about getting paid and the extension, all that, I was open to him finishing his career in Miami, as I know the Heat were. Okay, I'm not against Jimmy Butler. He raised them out of the dead, okay, in this last period of time. And it's been a joy to watch him play when he's been engaged, particularly during the playoff runs. But I don't think he's helped himself at all. Am I wrong?
No, he's got one leverage play left, and that's to opt into the deal and say, hey, do y'all want to blow up another season and deal with this bullshit all of next year as well? It doesn't sacrifice any kind of flexibility in the 2026 year. So the Heat could ultimately say, okay, let's see how this works out. Because I think at that point, if he were to opt in, if that's his final leverage play, which that wouldn't happen until the summer. So, we'll be having a lot of podcasts to do between now and then. I think the Heat would have to think long and hard about what the hell the value would look like at that point. Because I think he opts into that deal and everyone knows that they're not going to be able to make another season work of this. So I think the Heat really want, and we'll get into your game here over the break. But I think the Heat want him to get back because you need time to evaluate between now and February the 6th. I mean, at the moment of this conversation, Ethan, the Heat are a half game out of home court seeding in the Eastern Conference right now. I'm not saying that's because the Heat are a great contending team. I'm saying it's the state of the East. And if you can have home court advantage in the first round of a playoff series, like that's the kind of thing that the Heat play for, like it or not. And I just think that it's an interesting moment. It's going to be an inflection point for both the organization and the player, because you need to evaluate whether this is something that the word you've used so many times now is untenable. How untenable is it going to be? And do you need to make a move before February the 6th? Or can you take this all the way to the summer and then see if Jimmy uses his final piece of leverage by opting in?
Let's talk about the untenable thing on the other side of the break, because as you said, that's kind of what came up today is the Bobby Marks's belief. And again, Bobby's a guy that I do trust his opinion. This is not a report. I want to be clear on this, but it's his educated opinion. that based on what's out there right now, he does not see the Heat making a trade before the deadline, which again is the way we've kind of been leading you lately because they're not getting offered anything good. I mean, they're getting offered contracts beyond 2026 that they don't want. I mean, that's really where this is at. There's no team that feels motivated to do this other than Phoenix. And again, they're not going to do a direct deal with Phoenix. So there has, and then there's the Beal factor that comes into play. And I don't think that Jimmy doing this has made other coaches and executives around the league say, okay, we got to go get that guy right now. Like there were other ways to handle this where they might have felt that way. I'll read one more report here just before we get to the other side, and then we'll get into our untenable game. This was from Mark Stein. Phoenix wants Butler and Butler wants Phoenix. I mean, it's obvious at this point. I've heard they want him bad. One league source says of the Suns, but the obstacles presenting such a swap continue to be considerable. Before Bradley Beal's obsessively discussed no trade clause can even come into play, Miami and Phoenix need a third team willing to absorb Beal's monster contract to emerge. And again, we are where we were with that, which is that there is no such team at this point that's motivated. Yes, Greg.
Before we get to your game, I think it's interesting to watch as we are doing this show. The Denver Nuggets are down 86-67 to Dallas. They play them twice in a row here, and then they play Houston, the Heat, Orlando. Watch the Denver Nuggets. They may be motivated to get involved somehow, and I know that that's been out there a little bit, but I think that that is the prime example of a team that could maybe try to facilitate something and have enough skin in the game because they need to get better. So watch how they do in this stretch. Just wanted to
Well, wasn't one of the reports that Beal would waive his no trade clause for Denver? So maybe it wouldn't be Jimmy going there. Maybe they could use a player like Bradley Beal. I'm just throwing that out there because that was, I think, one of the 4 teams that was mentioned. And again, it's hard to kind of dig through all this stuff, but it seems to be that was the case. I mean, Denver should be motivated to do something because they've got a player who's the best in the world right now, and I don't think they've got enough around him right now. The team's not as good as it was 2 years ago. They've lost KCP, obviously, and they lost Bruce Brown. It's not the same team that they had. They've counted some of these young players to pop. But honestly, the Heat's young players have popped more than Denver's have, even though they've taken them in about the same spaces of their rounds. So we haven't seen like the huge growth from some of the guys. They've spurts, right? With Christian Braun and Peyton Watson and some of them, but not the total emergence. So, and Jamal Murray's taken a step back. So I feel like that they may be motivated to do something, and we'll see. But again, it benefits the Heat and Jimmy for another team to get involved here, as long as it's a team Jimmy's willing to go to. And I'm getting tired of hearing that Jimmy cares about winning when the Memphis thing was dismissed out of hand. When honestly, I look at any team in the league and I'm like, adding Jimmy to that roster would move them from kind of interesting second round team to potential title contender. The first team I think of is Memphis. Honestly, Denver could be one too, but the first one I think of is Memphis. Like his fit there is really good from a basketball perspective.
Agree.
This ain't about winning. This is about money. That's it. And Memphis would be in a position where they may not be able to pay everybody because they're not. They have small market considerations. Phoenix does not. They're just they made a mess and now they're trying to clean up the mess by throwing more money at it, and that's basically why they're looking at Jimmy Butler. Anyway, on the other side is we're going to do comfortable, uncomfortable, untenable. Before we do, you know what's uncomfortable? Broken wheels. You Break Wheel Fix, our friend Mark, his team down there in North Miami. They do everything from fixing your wheels. They'll give you a loaner wheels if you need them. Wheel powder coating, rim refinishing, wheel polishing, finishing. They do all that stuff. They'll get you the cool colors as well. They do the Heat colors. They do the Canes colors. You don't want the Marlins colors, but the Panthers color. Get the Panthers colors. Those you'll feel pretty good riding around with those. Check it out. YouBreakWheelFix.com. Based in North Miami. Again, they moved to a bigger shop to accommodate all the people that we send. And if you mention 5 reasons, you get 5.5% off your next order. So again, it's a U at the start, letter U, YouBreakWheelFix.com. And again, YouBreakWheelFix on Instagram. All right, let's go through some of these scenarios. I'm going to go from Jimmy's perspective on this, okay? You tell me how comfortable or uncomfortable. All right. Jimmy comes back. We'll do a scale. So 1 to 10. No, we'll go 1 to 22. His number's 22. So you're going to give me, we're going to go.
I like
it. Okay. 1 to 22. All right. Jimmy Butler is asked to come back on January 17th when the suspension is over and says, no, I'm not coming back. How uncomfortable does that make it for the Heat?
It doesn't make it uncomfortable at all for the Heat. I mean, that makes their decision-making process easier because I mean, if Jimmy says he doesn't want to be around, then it's not them, it's him. And so like that one's the easy one here. I think that's what they hope he would do. But I don't think Jimmy is prepared to do that.
Okay.
Look,
So
I could be wrong.
No, he said 1 to 22. What are we saying?
For the Heat or for Jimmy? For the Heat, you're saying?
For the Heat. Not for Jimmy. I'm doing this from the Heat's perspective based on Jimmy's actions. That's how we're going to do this.
Let's go with 5.
Okay. I mean, I think there is some level to it because I think some fans would freak out, right? Like there's fans, especially the casual fans, are like, "Oh my, he's refusing to play." But every time we poll this over the past, Jimmy's losing support.
Mm-hmm. People are saying it's more fun watching the team. That's another thing that is on social media.
But that's another reason why the leverage has shifted here. So it's gone from like 50-50 to 80-20 and 70-30 in favor of the Heat. So now it's like 85-15. I mean, I literally pulled this and I was surprised at how strong this one was. And I polled, everyone's like, "Oh, you're leading the audience." I'm not leading the audience. This is not a leading question. Okay. Because I don't even know how I'd vote on this one. Let me go to it. I'm sorry. Do you want Jimmy Butler to play for the Heat again? Not even this year. Anytime. Okay, that's all I asked. Do you want Jimmy Butler to play for the Heat again? 2,100 votes as we're speaking. 58% no. Like not even play for them again. Was it? Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know that you were there. I think there are a lot. I think people have come around to that based on the actions, his actions, and then additionally the way that the team has started to kind of come together. I feel like that's what's led to that poll being that's kind of lopsided, 58-42. I thought it'd be closer to 50-50. Still, that particular question, it's not. Okay. All right, number 2. Jimmy Butler agrees to come back, but doesn't give it his all. So
discomfort level?
Yeah.
22. because I can tell you that the players have no problem with Jimmy being back in the locker room, but there's some on the coaching staff that were bothered by the way he handled those 2 games in Miami, specifically the New Orleans.
I know
game,
that too. Yeah.
And
it's up and down the coaching staff. It's up and down the coaching staff. It's up and down the coaching staff too, Greg.
So if he's bullshitting throughout games, that's going to be hard for them to manage. And Spoelstra also is not going to necessarily be a shrinking violet as it relates to confronting him on that, but also going directly up to Pat and explaining what the hell is happening, because this is the thing with being a half game out of the 4 seed. They can salvage this season. You know what I mean?
So Greg, sorry, to that point, if he's trying to create leverage, isn't that the move now?
What?
If he's trying to get out of here, if that's he's not going to get a new contract with the Heat doing that, obviously, but I don't think that's happening anyway. But I'm saying if he wants out of here,
it's come in and loaf around like you did against Indiana. You're right. Yeah.
I mean, is that the move? See, I don't say it's 22 because I think the Heat are prepared for this. I wouldn't go that high. I mean, I think that they will try to document with video evidence.
They'll suspend him quickly.
They'll suspend him, and then and then let the Players Association cry about it, and maybe they lose in this case. But I think they would. Again, their intention is not to send him home with pay. Okay, so then it just becomes a financial issue at that point. But I do think this is something that Jimmy could pull out. I absolutely believe this is possible now because I didn't think and I say that as someone who didn't think he would act the way he did when he came back, especially with what his people around him assured the Heat. I did not expect that he would pull that act. Okay, so now at this point, I don't put anything past him, and I think this is actually kind of a move where you make it murky, right? Like you're out there. You play hard some of the time, but not all the time. Now that's where your captain needs to step up.
Yeah.
And not just your captain, but the guy who has kind of assumed the captain duties here, which is, by the way, is 14. Okay. Because they're rallying behind him right now. It's pretty clear. All right. Just look at the way they interact with Tyler of late. All right. I think that's where 14 and 13 need to, it can't just be bam, like putting his hands up like this, which he did, okay, when Jimmy shot that one-legged three in the New Orleans game. But it's gonna have to be direct confront. It's gonna have to be obvious. I mean, if I were the Heat, I would prefer that it's obvious that their leaders step up and say, we're not going to tolerate that, right? Like that doesn't
For
isn't that what
sure.
has
And
to
I
happen
think that
here?
there's a good chance that they could say, hey, UD, can you hang out around the facility for the next few weeks and just kind of be a presence? Because I think that like that's the inspiration with which you need to approach this situation. The way
And you're right.
what would
Because
Udonis do?
Kevin is too nice,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Kevin's been fantastic through all this. Trust me, is he's been fantastic, and the way he's accepted, not coming on. I mean, you watch him in the video of them celebrating. He didn't even play in that game. Like he's been tremendous. He really
If
has.
Kevin Love had James Johnson's fighting skills, then he would be able to do the Udonis Haslam thing, but he doesn't have that.
Right. So okay. So 20. So you say 22. I say I'm not gonna go that high. I'll say
I was being dramatic.
I'll say 13 out of 22. I'll give you Bam's number. Somewhere between Bam and Tyler's numbers. 13.5
That's a good tie-in. I
is
like that.
is mine. Yeah, because I do think that makes it murky. It makes it uncomfortable, no question. But they're prepared for that possibility that he's going to do that. And so here's the other option. If you're the Heat in that case, you bring him back, you pay him, you put him on the end of the bench.
You could. That would be an ultimate sign of who has the control here, the ones who sign the paychecks. And I don't always side on that. Like I feel weird
either.
sometimes, actually,
Me
frankly,
too.
when we go
I'm
down
a
this
players
road.
guy,
But
Greg. I'm a players guy. That's this player has handled this horribly.
yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah. No, and so I find myself saying, you know what, you are being paid great money, and it's a guaranteed salary. And like you said, just get to April. Like, what are we doing here? And so that I start to lose a little bit of the empathy for the scenario because of the way that it's been handled.
All right, let me give you another one. So you have, I say doesn't come back. I agree. I think it's about a 5. I think it's about a 5 if he refuses to come back because the fans will panic. The Heat won't panic because they're prepared for that. Comes back, doesn't give it his all. I'm going to say 13.5 on that one. All right, now what if it continues to get out there that he's going to opt into this contract, which was put out there today?
It's his only play left. And, it also came out today via Mike Stern. Listen to me. Mark Stein. That Brooklyn is not interested in Jimmy Butler and using their cap space on Jimmy Butler. So the one team that he could use as a leverage play in free agency to say they can pay me the money that no one else wants to pay me is indicating that they don't want to pay Jimmy Butler. So I don't know that he has a lot of options, and opting in would probably be I would imagine that I guess that's his last card to pull. I don't know what else he's going to do here. Either he dogs it out, but there's ramifications for him in the current season if he ends up getting suspended more and stuff like that, if he's not playing his all. So we're talking after the season, like to commit to staying around in Miami when it seems so much like he wants to just get away from the entire scenario. That's what all the indications have been. It'd be a hell of a decision, but a lot of people say you're going to turn down $52 million. Most of us wouldn't.
Well, he also would be going back on everything that's been leaked here. I mean, it kind of makes him look like he caved, right? Because, I mean, wasn't it from a credibility standpoint, it's not great because, again, they were okay if he opted in. They were okay if he opted out. They were willing to negotiate 3 years. They never offered it. They can't really now. What they could offer was the ripping up the first year, giving him essentially it's an extra $3 million. By the way, and then the second year 58. By the way, he's already lost more in the suspension than was the difference in salary for next season. I mean, this is like one of those where you kind of the spite of it. And this gets back to some of what happened with Dwayne too, which was the part on Dwayne's side I didn't always really understand. Like you went to Illinois, paid tax, you ended up getting less money. You know what I'm saying? Like this is where pride gets in the way because he's already lost more. Unless the NBA PA is able to claw that back, which I think, at best is unlikely. Okay.
He
Or
said to the
portion of it,
Washington Post he thinks he's still in his prime, Ethan. So if he really believes that, he thinks he's going to try to get himself to a postseason destination and show out and get one last contract.
Phoenix isn't even a postseason destination right now, Greg. They're
You're
out
right.
of the
They're a
plan.
game under 500, I think.
Right. So, and now there's going to be an integration period. And okay, do I think they'd be better? Let's say that they somehow got rid of Beal and replaced him with Jimmy, which I think is highly unlikely still. Okay, but let's say that happened. Okay, and let's say they had to give up Ryan Dunn in the process. Who, by the way, if you're the Heat, that's somebody I would be trying to grab. Okay, the rookie who's been impressive this year, shot the ball better than people thought he would. Very good defender. But even so, like, are we guaranteeing that that West is very competitive right now? There are some teams I think that are going to add at the deadline also. I mean, you would think they make the play-in at the very least. I don't think they have enough time to ramp up with Jimmy to get to a top 6 necessarily. So what are we even talking about? You may not even get to playoff Jimmy. But again, it gets back to this. He's already given up more in the suspension than he would have gotten this in the rip up of the deal. So now we're just talking about the $58 million. That's it. It's not even this whole thing about the 2-year 113. We're not even talking about that anymore. We're talking about just the $58 million. And I guess he could, again, if he opted in this year, he could try to get that from somebody else the year after. But I mean, this is why I don't go that high on this opt-in thing, because yes, he could. I've always thought this is a possibility if he doesn't see anything else out there. But then what? Okay, so then he stays with Miami, and let's say he doesn't report to camp next year, and then they suspend him again. So they're taking away some of the $58 million, right? And
he's basically wasting all the rest of his great years,
right? I mean, that seems like a shame. Like Jimmy Butler is worth watching play basketball, and I understand there's some hurt feelings here. I get it. I'm not saying Pat did everything perfectly, particularly that press conference, which it's clear. And let's just be clear on this now. There's been a lot of conversation about how Jimmy Butler wants confrontation, right? Wants confrontation. No, he doesn't. He didn't with Pat, right? Not as far as the comments go. He didn't take those particularly well based on the reports. And I go back to this. That press conference was not just about Jimmy. I mean, the most negative word he used about anybody, Pat used about anybody, was that?
Fragile.
Fragile. I mean, he literally called Taylor fragile.
Had to beat you to it.
Hey, no, but it's true. He called him fragile. Like he like that's. I mean, what did he say about Jimmy? He needs to play more, and he didn't like. If you're not on the court, shut up. Right? That was that thing about the Boston series. Okay, so maybe that could have been handled in a more delicate manner. I get it, but again, I thought this was a normal Tuesday night in Miami Heat land. That like you like the confrontation. So I just think in a lot of different ways, Jimmy's reputation, which he built here, which is based off confrontation, playing hard, right? Getting it out of the mud, dragging his team, like he's damaged all of those with the way that this has been handled, all of it. And I think he's found that this ain't Minnesota, and he's not 28. That's the other thing. He was actually 27 at the time, I think, because remember he tried to get out of there, he didn't. Then he went to Philadelphia, so he's not 27. Like he's not entering his prime years. He's had his prime years. He's had them. Now he can still be a very effective player at a certain price point. And obviously in the playoffs, he has the potential to ramp it up. I wanted him to finish his career in Miami. They did too, I believe. I really do believe that. I think that I'm not saying everybody. Trust me, there's some of the support staff. There's going to be the next parade. I'm Biscayne. Unfortunately, is not going to be for a championship. It's for the pressure being alleviated in that building on some people. Okay, all right. But that's not a good enough reason to let it for the Heat to have walked away from this. Jimmy's walked away from it. He's walked away from the chance to finish here in a way. And I'm just looking at these leverage possibilities. I say coming back and even more than the opt-in, coming back and making it murky is his best leverage play right now. But it does damage his reputation further, and it becomes more of a clown show. And then I do think the NBA at that point is going to have the Heat's back. We'll see, but I feel like that's where they would step in.
And I think the coach's frustration we referenced earlier would start to bleed into the locker room and the players, because this is a team that's starting to figure out, even if the competition hasn't been great, they're trying to figure out how they can make a run in the East, and they're playing well. And the way Tyler's talking, like, he feels really good about the way that his season is going. And I don't expect him to, along with Bam, want them to kind of spiral in the wrong direction. So it's going to be an interesting moment when he's back in that locker room, if he's not giving it 100% or if he's combative, etc. I just think that there's a chance for a lot of other people to be like, all right, cut the shit, like, basically is what it boils down to. And so that's the other risk of all of this. But again, everybody's comfortable being uncomfortable.
I'm glad you mentioned Tyler. We'll close there. I think he has done more to enhance his reputation this year than pretty much any player in the NBA. And I say that as someone, and you and I
Agreed.
both had trade shows about Tyler Herro. And then there was question about his commitment, not to the game, but there was questions that even the Heat sort of let out there about certain seasons and all what was really his priority. But he has absolutely answered the bell this year. Like, there's just no, I mean, from the maturity from the very first moment at media day to the way he's handled this, to the fact that he's come out and performed every night. He's played every game. He's played hard every game, and now you can see his teammates starting to come behind him. And so I just think we need to note that people are starting to show their true colors during this situation. And Tyler has absolutely passed the test this year. Like, I'll knock on something because we know that anything can happen with him, obviously, and and all. I don't even want to mention the possibilities or this time or whatever. Okay, you hope you can play as many games as possible, but to this point, like, people are saying, well, do it in the playoffs. Tyler has handled more pressure in a lot of ways, okay, than he would even handle in the playoffs. What he's handled over the past couple of weeks, and again, you look at the
He
performance
wants
last
those
night. He's playing.
games.
He wants them. He's playing free. I mean, and it's just the things he's said, the things he's done. I think he's made a lot of fans in South Florida who have followed this situation closely, just in the way he's handled this situation. And it would take a lot for me to criticize him at this point. Whereas I was critical of him about some things over the years as well. But I just think people prove it with their actions. That's what they do, and he has really proven it this year. So credit to him for that, and credit to the players for coming together during this stretch and getting out on the road, and for Spo for doing a better job the last week, because we mentioned they could be higher in the standings if he didn't burn a timeout he didn't have, and there weren't all these blown leads. Like, it has not been his most consistent season either. We've acknowledged that, but I mean, to get these 3 wins on the road with everything going on is I don't care about the opponents. That's pretty good stuff right now. So we'll see what happens in LA. All right. Thanks to Greg. Thanks to our sponsors, U-Break, Wheel Fix, Underdog. Use the code 5. I'll be back for Clipper coverage on Monday night, again, provided that there is a game.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.